This is my worm bin. It's an IBC tote cut in half. The top part where the hole is, that's just been turned upside down and put into the bottom part with where the tap is. And the reason that I do that is so I can catch any fluid that drains through. What I've been doing with this is I've been using it to store my leaves, my leaf mould. It was too much, there were too many leaves for me to just stack up and put it into a bag. So now that they've broken down a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack all of this up into bags, and then after I've bagged them up, the bottom will have a lot of worm castings. I'm going to harvest those worm castings and start the worm bin all over again, and I'll bag the leaves up and I'll leave them to break down over the next year, because the whole purpose of leaf mould is it's not about making quick compost, it's about making a fungal compost, something that's fungal dominated, not nutrition rich but fungal dominated, and that adds real fungal life to your soil. That's the whole purpose of that. So if I dig down here, that's there's loads of worms in there, baby worms. That bottom layer can be harvested. So what I'll do is I'll pack up the leaves and I'll put them into bags with a few stalks from courgettes and squash plants. That can all go in there as well. So I'll bag that up and I'll just stick them to one side and leave them to break down. So this is the last bit of leaves now that I'm going to get out of here. I think we've got to a point where we've got all the leaves out.
Where are the worms?
The worms are going to be in here as well. I'm going to get the worms out in a second. That's not a worm. Just watch out the way. Watch out the way. Watch out the way. So I'm just bagging up all the leaves. I'll leave them to break down.
I got a worm.
Leave them in the bucket for now. We're going to get all the worms out of here.
Hello.
So I think we're good with the work.
What about the worms? Have you got all the worms here? How does the worm do a weed?
I think we're good with the worms now from the leaves now from here. So look at this piece of rotting wood as well. Look. This is just a piece of timber that's rotted down that I use the old beds for. Nutrition value in this is really low, so it's just like leaves. Leaves have a really low nutrition value, so I'll add this to the leaf mould and let it rot down in there. And because being in there, what's going to happen is it's going to break down really slowly over the next year, and it'll be a nice fungal based compost. That's the whole purpose of leaf mould really. It's not to be a quick, fast method. It's supposed to be a nice, slow method, a soil additive that will add a nice fungal life to your soil. So we'll carry on harvesting the worm castings now.
Where's the worm? Find a worm!
Khadi, can you go and get some buckets? Khadija, can you go get some buckets for me? Yeah. There's still some grass sods in here. Now, I added these grass sods in here I was doing one of the weeding one of the beds, so there was a lot of couch grass sods and a lot of normal grass sods, and what I've done is I've just chucked the whole chunk of mud in there as well, providing a really nice healthy environment for the worms to live in. Look at that. So I'll take the grass sods out, they haven't fully broken down yet, and I'll add them back in very shortly. So first, a lot of this stuff at the top is just going to go straight back in. It's the next level of stuff that I really want. There's a chunk of leaves there, they can go in the leaf bag. So this stuff that hasn't broken down at all, I'm just going to take out first of all. I'm not even going to bother sifting that, and that's going to be the bottom base, the bottom layer of the next part of the couch grass, part of the worm compost. Little bits of grass, put it in with leaf mould and let it, when we exclude the light from there, it's all going to break down anyway. So I'm just going to carry on taking out. That's your sand bucket. I want the big buckets. Come on, cheeky monkey.
Ah! My top's wet.
So I'm just going to keep taking out these big bits, and then I'm going to get on with sifting it. You've got one there that's empty, haven't you?
Dad, you use this to get the water for chickens.
That's fine. See, those leaves can go in there. And I'm going to start sifting now. We're wet now to use the really small, the fine hole sieve, so I'm going to use my big sifter to try and get through it a little bit easier. And make a little bit of a faster job. And this stuff that hasn't broken down, this is just going to end up back in the worm bin and let them make work of it. See all of this stuff that hasn't broken down.
Up like that.
This is just going to form the base of the next.
For the worms.
Khadija, wash yourself. It's really quite soggy, so I'm not going to try and harvest the castings from here. I'm just going to add it to the top of the next layer. It's quite difficult harvesting wet casts, and especially now all the worms are sinking to the bottom of this. So I'm just going to scoop all this up. As you can see, it's really soggy. And that I have this set up because as soon as I turn this tap on, I collect all this wonderful worm juice, And the biggest reason that I'm doing this clean is so I can clean out the underside of this. Because a lot of leaves and stuff are falling in. So it got a little bit late yesterday, so it was getting a bit dark, so we left it. And it's a good job that we did actually, because I put some bricks down to support the base, and I filled it with wood chips. I literally use wood chips for everything. It's been everything. So it's giving it a nice base for the tank to go back on. We'll put the tank back on. I'll show you what that looks like afterwards. So I've put the bin back in place now, and with that little wall that we've added now, it's a lot easier to get the bucket underneath to catch the water. And what I'll do is I'll give this a quick clean, just so we can get some of the mud out. See, this is the problem: if you don't clean that bottom part out, the tap for the tote doesn't close properly and it keeps leaking, and you lose all your worm juice like that. So all this is muddy water right now that's coming out. It doesn't have to be spotless in here, but it just helps if it's the less dirt that's in here, just so it can get rid of that. Doesn't cause as many blockages, you see. So this is what I mean, all the debris that gets stuck in the tap won't let it close properly. I should have given it a sweep while it was still dry rather than put the water in first. Let's push that to that, push the big bits to that side. And I won't waste this water. There's still quite a few worms in here. So I'm out of buckets now, so I'm just using the kids' play bucket to run the last bit of water through. So I've just put a few bricks in to keep the top part a little bit elevated, so the water can flow easily and the water doesn't rise up into the top part. Now the top half can just sit back on. If I did have the cap for that would have been ideal, but I've lost the cap. The corners have got some holes drilled into it, so the water, any liquid can drip through. Now what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to cover it up with a piece of wood. So I'll just cover that up. I'll cover the other part up with that rock. There we go. That's fine. That's good enough. I'll just add back the unbroken down bits of material from yesterday, which has got all the worms in. So that's got the stuff that's not broken down, the stuff that was left over from yesterday. As you can see, that bucket's just full of worms, still crawling on the sides. So I'm just going to try and scoop some of those out. There's worms everywhere. Now, the point of this isn't to make fast compost, it's to allow the worms to do their work slowly over the course of 6 months, a year. I'm not in a rush for this stuff. It is really nutritious, so little does go a long way. So this is the stuff, so I'll just keep adding this. And there's bits of plastic. Look, there's an old party popper there. Look at the worms there. How juicy they look. I got told off by my daughter yesterday for calling them worms juicy worms. In all honesty, if that was a little bit drier, I could have sieved some of that off, harvested some more of that, but I don't want to take too much right now. I don't mind coming back at this in a few months' time. There's some baby worms in there. Get back. There's another one left. Get back. Oh, there's loads still in here. You can come out in there and you get there's another one there. Okay, and there's more there. Look, they're everywhere. Happy worms. What I'll do, I'll actually give it a little rinse and it'll just be a little bit easier. I'll wash the worms out. If they were in there, if they were in loads of water, then that'd be bad for them. But because there's holes at the bottom and the water's just going to drain out, it's not going to be too bad for them. See what I mean by this? Is the really wet stuff from yesterday that was at the bottom. This is the bucket from my normal compost pile. Do you know the one that you saw me harvesting the worms out of in the other video? So there's got some regular earthworms in here, some red wrigglers. Look at that. There's more to be added back there. And if I really wanted to, I could harvest a lot more. Like I say, I could harvest a lot more out of here, but I don't want to take out too many worms from here. like I've done with the other compost already. I've got loads of worms in there already, so I don't want to take out too many. So what I am doing is with the other buckets, because there was loads of worms stuck to the side, and I'm having a bit of trouble getting them out one by one with my hands. I'm just literally taking a little bit of water, and just the same water I'm rinsing all the buckets out with. I don't want to add too much fluid to here, but at the same time I don't want to leave the worms in the buckets to die. Just by adding it like that. They want a little bit of moisture, the worms do, but they don't want too much. And with that amount of water, it's not going to really harm them, so that's fine. So this is the stuff that I did harvest off. Most of this is just worm castings. It looks really nice. It is a little bit wet, that's why I didn't go through it with a fine sieve, and I went through it with the quite big sieve, the one with the big holes. Because of that, there are stuff that's not broken down fully. What I will do is I will let this dry off a little bit, and as I let it dry off, I'll sieve it again with the small sieve and put the big stuff back in here and keep the fine stuff for myself. So just like yesterday, I'm gonna go through, and as I'm taking the top layers off, the worms will be sinking down. Admittedly, I am going a little bit fast. Get that light a little bit closer to this box. There you go. Well, that can go back in there. As I get lower down, I'm going to find loads and loads of worms. See, with vermicompost, it's only as nutritious as the stuff that you put in. So I know loads of people make it with lots and lots of paper, but it is good for them. They can deal with it, it's fine. But you wanna, with any compost, you wanna vary the amount of ingredients that you do put in. One of the things about the way I get my wood chips, I've got the guy who supplies me with wood chips, you've seen him actually delivering them on one of my videos. I can ring him up and ask him what trees he's cutting, and I can ask him to deliver pretty much any type of wood chip that I want. So when I want to make an ericaceous compost, because I can ring him up and ask him what trees he's cutting down, and then he'll deliver me pretty much anything that I want. So like I was saying, when I want to make an ericaceous compost, I can ask him to, and he's cutting down things like conifers and pine, and I can ask him to drop that off for me. I mean, with this I have already sifted out a lot of the big worms, taken them out, but I'm just going through it one last time. Harvesting some of my castings and putting some of the worms back in. Like I said, I don't mind if some of the worms end up in the beds, because at the end of the day the beds need to have worms in there as well. That bit's too thick with worms. I'm not going to try and get all these out. I'm just going to chuck the whole lot back into the old bin. And like the other lot, I'll just give it a quick rinse. So I've harvested a wheelbarrow load and that crate full of worm castings. What I will do is I'll add some of these worm castings to the compost my homemade compost that I've shown you on a couple of videos, and a lot of the worm castings I'll store and I'll add to the potting mixes as I pot the plants up. That's why it doesn't matter that there's some unbroken down bits in here, and yes, it's good for the potting mixes to have worms in there, because they're going to be aerating the soil, bringing air down to the roots, helping the plant thrive. I set this worm bin up a couple of years ago when I got these IBC totes. They needed quite a bit of cleaning. I managed to clean them out. It took me a long time to clean them, but after I cleaned them, we set the worm bins up. We've got two. One's being used as a storage container for my manure at the moment. Every time we've got some scraps from the house, we don't go to the trouble of blending it down, and we don't go to the trouble of dicing it up really small. We'll just chuck it in the worm bin. We don't mind the fact that it's coming out quite slow, because when I do harvest, I harvest such a large amount. Sorry, I got distracted by the size of that worm. Look how juicy that worm is. You've got the red wrigglers, you've got that just looks like a regular old earthworm to me. That looks like a baby earthworm. You can see the colour difference between the red wriggler and the regular earthworm. Like I was saying, what I will do with this wheelbarrow is, like you saw me with the crate of worm castings, I will just go through the top, take the worm castings off the top, slowly exposing the rest to the light, and when I get to the bottom, hopefully we should have loads and loads of worms there, and that I'll just add back to the worm bin, because there'll be tons of worms there. I don't want to get rid of them all. I don't mind if some go. I'll leave it there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.